Okay, hi guys. I'm privileged here now to speak to you guys a bit about photography, especially regarding models. Just want to give you a bit of a background on myself, on my photography. I am an amateur photographer, so I don't know all the technical details like all the professional guys do. I'm mostly a wildlife and aviation photographer. Just to give you an idea of stuff that between me and my wife, what we usually take is something like this leopard over here, taken in a Kruger. This is the stuff we like to do and all that. Regarding model photography, why do we want to take photos of our models? Basically, every artist wants to showcase what they do. Let's say a painter, for instance, he can put his painting up on the wall. Pottery guys, they have got their displays and all that. With models, sometimes it's difficult to have a proper showcase of your models, due to some of the models are very delicate and small. So one of the best options is to build a portfolio of photos of every single model that you build. You can put it on a website. You can get it published in magazines, for instance, like say Fine Scale Modeler, send photos in, etc. Now, to me, to get a proper photo out of a model, we will need a proper setup and proper cameras. I just want to get an indication here. How many guys are using DSLRs and all that? Mic and Trick point and shoots, compact cameras, cell phones.
Look, Herman, I mean, using compact cameras, it just depends on the age. I don't use our little compact camera anymore.
I'll speak now about that. Trust your old cell phone. You can get very good pictures with it if you get a proper setup on it as well. Most of the cell phone cameras these days got very good digital sensors built in now, especially the high-end cameras. Then going to compact cameras. This is a compact camera that actually you can set the settings up as well. It's got a similar functionality to some lower-end DSLRs, and with setting the aperture, etc. Most compact cameras don't. They got basically zoom in, zoom out, press button, take photo. This is the Canon 7D. It's a semi-professional DSLR. I usually take photos between this one and that one over there, which is a 7D Mark II. Now, to me, to get proper photos, you need a camera with settings that you can set, like aperture. You're taking photos in RAW and all that, because then you can actually manipulate your photos afterwards to get a better quality photo if you really need. Don't take me wrong, you can get good photos with any other camera as well. It's just a personal preference from my side. Second thing that you will be needing with that is lenses. Now, you won't be needing something like this for model photography. This is ideal for aviation, wildlife photography, etc.
You can say long comment.
True. Well, I can say you can also put it at the end of the room and just zoom in. This is 75 to 300 mil. You also don't need it for this. You need something with a very short focal range. I usually use an 18 to 55 mil, which I'll demonstrate a bit later on. I also got a 50 mil, which is a set focal range. But then you just have to you zoom in and out with actually moving the camera backwards and forwards. Where 18 to 55 mil, you can just zoom in and out, you put your camera at a specific spot on the tripod and take it from there. Third thing you usually would need if you want to take proper photos is a tripod. That will get rid of camera shake. You can get your proper light settings in. You can do a long exposure if needed, depending on the room with the lighting. Then, from that point, for something like a light booth or light tent, which I'll demonstrate a bit later on, to give a good, with a neutral background in the background, that will make sure you don't have anything that's distracting in the background and all that. A bad place actually to take photos is your modeling area, because there's lots of items in the background that can distract you from the item you're taking photos of. Lighting is a very important aspect as well. You need good lighting. In a room like this, there's very low lighting. You can take photos, but then you need a a tripod and take a long exposure to get a proper photo out. Although you can, if you go technical, you can set the ISO to a higher range, but then your photo starts going grainy. You want to take a photo on the lowest ISO range as possible, but I'll handle all that later on. With your cameras, you got an option of all the different modes. You got shutter mode, AV priority, manual mode. I prefer to take AV priority because that you can change your depth of field and how you want to take your photos. Now, when I mean depth of field, the lower your aperture is, in this case here, only that area there will be in focus. And the higher the aperture goes, your depth of field varies, then this whole area is in focus. So if you've got a model that, say a ship for instance, and you're going to go from stern to the front, stern is the back side, eh? Yeah, stern to the front side. And you focus right in the middle. The stern, if the stern is in this side, it will be out of focus. But if you change your depth of field and your aperture, then you're actually going to have the whole model in focus. Just to give you an idea, the focus is on this puppet over here, and we're having an f-stop of 2, which is opening up your aperture on the lens. You can see the whole fence is out of focus. Going to f-stop of f22, increasing, making the aperture smaller in this case, the whole fence is in focus as well. Similar with this, the focus was on the front light bulb and the back was out of focus. Now, if you close the aperture values on the camera, it would have then made all the bulbs in the background in focus as well. A proper way to use it is to take a look at this photograph. If the background was in focus as well, you wouldn't actually get that bit of a dramatic effect of the boy running to you. This would be almost like a real life photo. Now, only the little boy model, figure here is in focus, where the background is out of focus. It gives a lot of a dramatic effect. But that's basically aperture. I don't want to go into technical details because then to take aperture and all those various technical details, we need a few hours per item. Other modes that you got on here is shutter speed. Shutter speed is just, you don't technically need shutter speed for model photography because I use it mainly for aircraft photography where you want to slow down the prop to have a motion blur effect. ISO is definitely the lowest ISO setting possible that you're going to need. If your ISO is high, the photo will be very grainy. With a low ISO, your photo will be near the real life what you got. Sorry, I'm stumbling words today. Grainy photos is used more for art photography. If you want to depict your model to what people want to see, then that's not a good thing. Other things that you can take into consideration, this is a basic setup for a light box. Your lights need to be from the sides, and if you can, a light from top as well. That will get rid of most of the shadows around your model. I'll show you a bit later on here. We don't have a light from the top, but most of the shadows will be gone. This type of setup that we've got here with the alien figure here, with a blue background. Fine Sky Modeler magazine prefers people to take photos with a blue background, and actually, if you go onto websites and recommendations, they do recommend the blue background. It's a more of a subtle background, and you don't get the complete white exposure of a white background, for instance. Blue, grey, and white is your most common backgrounds people use. Now, there is people that use black backgrounds as well, but that depends on what type of model you're doing a photograph of. Here's another picture of taken of a blue background. As you can see, your shadows here at the back is very light. The lighting is a proper setup, similar to this one. Black backgrounds. Black backgrounds is used. Can you use something like this for a very dramatic effect? This is a very gloss background, giving you the reflection of the motor model there at the bottom. Some more examples of that. This is a professional light tent which the guys uses. These light tents usually goes for at a place like Camera Stuff for R1,000 or more. You can build one your own, and I'll show you one which I built specifically this weekend. It cost me between 100 and 150 rand just to get the materials to build this. What can you do with model photography? You can play around with it a lot. This year, the gentleman was asked to take a photograph of an Audi i8. Alright. He decided to use a model instead of the real car, and it actually was used in an ad. This has been on the internet for quite a few weeks now. That, for instance, is an example, and that was actually used in an ad. And that's not a real car, it's actually a die-cast model. His basic setup, and similar like that. And that was also one of the photos that was used in the ad itself. You can go very artistic in your models. You can actually depict, let's say Arthur takes one of his figures, and he prints a nice background of the time period that puts his figure in there, take a photograph of it, and basically look like that figure is in that era. A lot of guys also take photographs of the aircraft, put it to grayscale or to sepia to make it actually look like the photo was taken, say for instance, in the Second World War. Other depictions is forced perspective photography. If you take this photograph here, all the vehicles that's in front here is models. Taken like this, with an actual real life background. Another example is this vehicle's over here, taken like that. Now if you look at this photograph here, you wouldn't say that's actually any models at all. And if you want to depict your models this way, go for it. Well, I'm going to move now on to basically depiction of the light tent. So we can stop at this point. What I've got here is just built out of normal PVC pipe you get from Builder's Warehouse. This is a basic form with a infinity curve white background with two spotlights on the side. As you can see, just without the spotlights, your items will be very dark at that stage, at here. We'll take a photo of it, which I will show you a bit later on. The camera actually automatically slows down to a slow shutter speed to keep with the ISO 100, which I set the camera to, and I've set it to AV8, which is a fairly middle aperture. Kan ik in ieder geval daar twee licht aan zetten? Daarna absoluut. Giving here, I've got two LED light bulbs. They give a color temperature of about 6,500 Kelvin, which is a very cold color. You get other light bulbs which gives you a warmer color, but I found with these type of light bulbs, your color depiction is a bit more realistic than actual warmer colors. The ideal is to actually put diffusing material in front of the two light bulbs, because it actually, at the moment, it's too bit of a harsher light. It actually will just tone down the light slightly a bit. So what I'm doing is going to take another photo of this, which I will a bit show you later, just in Lightroom, for instance, editing it and making it stand out a bit more, which you can play around with as well. As you can see as well here, there's basically no shadows around the figures here. That would be your best bet if you don't have any of that. Your angle of lighting also can, if you change the angle of lighting as well, it actually gives you a bit more dramatic effects on actual figures in this case. So if I change the lighting like this here, the figures at this point here, it actually gets a bit more highlighted instead from the side. So depending on how you actually want your model or figure to be photographed, play around with the lighting. Let's take some of Arthur's figures, for instance. The one with the hood, the one Scale Model Expo was the Templar. The Templar, yes. It's a hooded figure. If you put the spotlight from in front, you start highlighting his face. Put it from the side, depending on which side you put it on an angle, you actually can make an effect of actually highlighting half his face and putting a shadow over his face. Also, for dramatic effects on how you want to take your photographs. If you take, for instance, to do the lights from above, I'm just going to move this one here. Obviously then the top will be highlighted, but then you start having shadows here on the side. That's why ideally you should have actually a third light, which should be from the top side. That's the basics of a light tent. There's a lot of websites regarding this to build this. There's guys that actually take a big box, cut out the sides, put the fusing materials on the left and right side and top side, then with the infinity curve in the middle. Basic light tent. To me, that's a bit bulky because you have to stash that somewhere. Something like this, for instance, I can just break up and put away later on. What I usually do when I edit my photos, I take all my photos in RAW. The difference between RAW and JPEG is a very compressed format. Most compact cameras take directly into JPEG. RAW is a digital negative of your photo. Usually a RAW file on my camera is about 20 to 25 meg, where a JPEG file is about 5 to 6 meg. Obviously it makes sense if you've got lots of people think, I don't have big enough memory cards, I'll take JPEG photos. But the amount of detail that you can recover in a RAW file is tremendous. A JPEG file, because it's already compressed, a lot of detail is lost. And if your photos, for instance, like underexposed, you cannot recover that information. Same if it's overexposed, that information cannot be recovered. While in a RAW file, all that information is already there, you can actually recover it and give a perfect photo. Example of that is, last year I took a photo at Swartkops Air Force Base where the Gripen was taking off at dusk. I forgot to turn on RAW settings. I've got a nice little flame of the engines at the back, and that's it. Can't see anything else on the aircraft. Where my wife took the exact same photograph on her camera, but she has RAW enabled. The JPEG version of her camera also showed the exact same image I've got, but the RAW file we recovered and we got a perfect photo out of that. This is a photo I've taken earlier on a light tent of this lens, just for an example. As you can see, the exposure of the white background is very intense. If you've used diffusing material in front of your lights, that would have been a bit more acceptable. If we develop this photo, we can actually get rid of the highlights and underexpose the photo slightly. Now this is about at 6,400 Kelvin. That's setting the white balance of the photo to the exact same temperature as the light bulbs. In this case, now we underexpose the photo slightly, and then you can see on the sides the shadows are coming out. If this photo was taken in RAW, we wouldn't have been able to do this at all. Now Lightroom is a nice tool to develop your photos. You get lots of freeware other tools as well. Depending on the camera you bought, with Canon you get digital TPP, can't remember what it stands for. That also takes your RAW photos and you can do some development on it. I prefer Lightroom as a professional tool, although it's slightly expensive. But they've got an option from Adobe that you can actually rent the tool for $10 a month. So you don't have to buy a 10 grand software and then you're stuck with it if you don't use it. You can actually cancel anytime you want. Nice thing about that is, well, the software gets upgraded as Adobe upgrades as well. So if Lightroom sees the new Lightroom version just came out now, so I immediately get the same upgrade. If you bought the software, you have to buy the new upgrades as well, which is a bit cost ineffective. Now going back to the tool, setting your color temperature brings okay, let me just actually show you lower color temperature. That makes the item very cold. Artistic effect. But if your color of the lights were cold at that point, the photo would almost look exactly the same like this if you set it to a lower temperature. Same if you use warm globes, the photo would have looked like this, and if you set it to the right color temperature of the actual globe, it will come back to what it actually should have been at that point in time. Your tint is just to give it a color tint to it. Exposure is to underexpose or overexpose the photo. Overexpose, give it whitewashes the whole item. Underexposing it makes it completely dark. So you want to play around and just make your exposure right to the point where you are happy with it. Say something like that. You've got a slight shadow at the background, but your white background is not overexposed and not distracting to the eye. And from there that's just basic editing. Then you can control the highlights and shadows. Let's bring the highlights down and shadows up. Control your whites and blacks. Basically just making it brighter or not. Just do the black a bit down. And just by playing around like that, you can actually see it's almost a near depiction of actually what this lens would have looked like under the light. Now, I haven't done a Lightroom course. What I've learned from Lightroom, I've done myself. To test every single function, it's a few hours as well. The basics on this is you want to get the photo what it looks like at that point. The camera doesn't give you a 100% realization of what's there. You just still have to do manipulation. A good photographer needs minimal editing on Lightroom because he knows his lights well. He knows his lights proper setup. Somebody like me, I'm not a good photographer and good enough photographer, so I still use Lightroom. Going back to the two figures. This is a figure taken without the light. As you can see with the lighting in the room, it's like a very warm tint on it. Adjusting the white balance, increasing the Kelvin makes it a bit warmer. Moving the Kelvin down too much makes it colder. So let's see, what was it?
Herman, can I just say something?
Yeah.
A lot of lights inside buildings, especially when you go to some of these shows and what have you, most of the light is, the artificial light is strobe.
Yeah.
That tends to act very well with colour. It tends to, especially on fine scale, it tends to put more your tones.
Mm-hmm.
So when you've got a lot more natural light coming through, so it's 50%, 50%, you'd obviously have to make the adjustments on that because a natural light, like ultraviolet light, if you've got ultraviolet light straight onto a model, it's not really an ideal situation because it's harder to try and balance out. And you can't see
the idea is you actually want to control the light that's on your model. In some cases you cannot control the light, but you can do your white balance settings on the camera as well. Say you go to a venue where there's fluorescent lighting. You can set your white balance to fluorescent lighting to cater for that. Sometimes with where the lights where it's like strobe lights and all that, they flicker as well. Now a camera like the 7D, actually takes care of that. They've got a setting to actually it continuously checking the lighting, and it will take the photo. When you press the button to take the photo, it will not take the photo if the light flickers. And actually, only at the point where it thinks the lights are right at that point in time. All the cameras doesn't do that. So then you'll actually see some of your photos. It might be actually a perfect photo, where the other photo is like a very cold or warm photo because of the light flicker at that stage. Now this photo here, if we take that now, I've moved the white balance a bit down, so it's almost very similar to what it was here under the lighting conditions. If I go back to what the lighting was at 4200, you can see it was it's a warm color. But it also depends. I've got other LED globes which gives a warmer color. What effect you want on your model at that stage? If you want a warm effect, then this is the type of photo you want. So let's zoom in quickly. As you can see, this is taken at ISO 100. There is no grain on there. Just to give you an indication what the grain would look like, if you increase the ISO, grain. Just need to find it quickly. At higher ISOs, this is basically the effect of the grain. With Lightroom, it can actually remove some of the grain, but you will start losing a lot of the detail as well. Because the grain, the way it works, the cameras work, it works in pixels, little square blocks. And it's the same with you. If you look at your camera, it says megapixels. It's the amount of pixels horizontally times the amount of pixels vertically. So if there's 5,000 pixels horizontally against 10,000 pixels vertically. If you times that, that's 50 megapixels, which is like some of the new Canon cameras are. That Canon over there, if I remember correctly, that's a 21 megapixel camera, and this one is a 18 megapixel. I'll show you now what the pixels look like. Let's get back to the image here and just remove the grain. Because I don't know, this is now actually showing it as a smooth one. Like I said, you can remove the grain with Lightroom, but then you start losing detail. For instance, in this area here, if there was a lot of grain here, at that stage, when you start moving detail, Lightroom has to decide which color it needs to basically go, which nearest to it. So if we've got this area here where the top of the hand is, in this case, it might actually start using this the darker color instead of the lighter color. So your image is going off slightly there. You can do sharpening as well with Lightroom, just to sharpen the image. If I'm just going to over sharpen the image. Over sharpening the image is also starting to get grain, so you have to beware of doing that. To get just a low sharpening, just to get a bit of extra detail in there. Don't need twice reduction. Okay, this is now before and after. This is just minor editing on this. As you can see on the side here, there's a bit of sharpening done, so the lines are a bit more sharper here, where you get a bit more blurry effect here in the background. The temperature is slightly cooler. Oh, actually no, the temperature is not cooler. Move it to what it was. There. The temperature is slightly cooler, so you get a bit more of the white effect here in the background. Moving to the other image that I've taken with the lights on. It was 6,400 Kelvin. So set that. You see the whites are coming out a bit more. So we had a blue tinge here initially. Moving the Kelvin slightly up, your whites are coming out here in the foreground. You can see, although this is a high gloss figures in here, so you can actually see the light reflections as well. So you have to be careful on that. If you've got the fusing material, you will actually have less of that specific glare. But this is just being used for an example. But you can also see the colors are a bit more realistic than actually what it was with these figures, with this one here. The colors is slightly warmer here, where actually in this case the color is slightly cooler, which to me is a bit of a better effect. The only negative part here is the reflections of the light bulb, but that also depends on the light bulb is very close to the models in this case because of the amount of space. Plus, there's no diffusing materials. But that's just the basics of how to take your photographs of your models. Most of it is actually you have to play around and get to the point where you're comfortable on the settings that you use. Not everybody uses the same settings. If you get the top photographers in the world, not one of them use the exact same settings on their cameras. Everyone got their own different style. Whatever style suits you is what you should use. It's like, for instance, Arthur painting his figures in some oil paints where, say Tony for instance paints in acrylic paints. Both users can get a perfect figure out, but both use different styles. Same with you and your camera. Also, whatever camera you use, if you are happy with using a Mic and Drick and you can get good photos of it, go for it. Don't go out and buy a 20,000 Rand camera just because you want to take photos of your models and showcase it. Okay, that's me.
Well done.